Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IRM's webinar today, put together by the South Africa and India Regional Interest Group of the IRM in the UK. The topic of our discussion today is reputation and risk management, how to stay credible in the era of fake news. Very much from an introductory perspective, we have seen the world change in recent times, and with this change, there's also been a technological convergence where communication moves faster, it's more liberal, and it's more immediate. In fact, the need for information has become much higher as we become more uncertain, and as the whole advent of uncertainty grows, we've also had much more increased requirement for immediacy of news. Most of us are sitting on social media daily to get our updates. The question is, we will hear from our panel today. Is that where we ought to be getting our news? How about if you're a business, is that where you ought to be getting your key updates when it comes to what is going on within the organization and in its immediate environment that impacts decision making? My name is Terence Morasiki. I am a director and head of research for the ABMI Research Institute, a member of IRM's Regional Interest Group in South Africa, and I'm very glad to be honored as your host for today. Today, we have quite an interesting lineup. We have quite a couple of useful and very knowledgeable and very experienced speakers who are very ready to talk to you all about the subject for today. Without much delay, I will get our program kickstarted by introducing the chair of the India Regional Interest Group, Harsh Shah, who will, in a moment, present his opening remarks for our session today. Thank you very much. Harsh?
Very good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's joined. Unfortunately, in this age of digital economies, misinformation tactics are likely to stay. And there may be significant repercussions if, the fake news incites a riot or causes a financial loss for a business or affects government operations and elections. And as the public adapts, it is very important now that enterprises address this fake news to be more mindful from an impact and a likelihood perspective. And I often keep telling people that the word fake is already a negative term. So by using more negative words in a response strategy, we are reinforcing the incorrect message, leading to further misinterpretation of the facts and even more unnecessary risk. So with this in mind, we're very glad to put together a rock solid topic, which is fake news risk management, how organizations should tackle this from a reputation risk management point of view and ensure that they're able to bring down the impact of such events to a controllable level. I'm Harsh, I'm the chair of the India Regional Group, and a warm welcome to all the panelists. Thank you for joining us today. A little bit about IRM. Headquartered in the UK, we're present across more than 140 countries. We give professional qualifications in enterprise risk management with designations, which are the gold standard for ERM. We do a lot of research and thought leadership. So if you're interested in subscribing to our magazine publications, please log on to the website and you could be added to our mailing list. With that, I'd now like to give it back to Terence. Thank you once again.
All right, thank you very much, Harsh, for a wonderful welcome. I just want to reiterate the whole issue around fake news, being that the difficulty when it comes to news is we all rely on news to make decisions, and sometimes when you now start realizing that you made a decision on the basis of wrong facts, and we can take this into an organizational context, it presents general problems no matter where you are. I'm going to start by maybe introducing our next speaker. Our next speaker is Amos Mananyeto. You are first. Certainly, you are going to set the tone today. You've got about 15 minutes maybe to wow the audience. I will take my screen off. Would you like to show your face on the screen and maybe talk to our attendants today? But let me introduce Amos. Amos is one of the foremost journalists in South Africa with a career spanning over 2 decades. His list of accomplishments is hectic. I mean, I tried to read through what he has achieved and I realized that he is best in terms of what he has to say about the topic at hand. So I'd like to welcome you, Amos. Please go ahead with your free presentation. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, colleagues. Yeah, I think obviously, I looked at the topic, and I think in the space that we are in, there's just so much going on at the moment. And from the list that you sent yesterday, I think I chose to speak a little bit on two of them, because I think they are very much closer to what we do as journalists every day. I mean, I've been in this business for 20 odd years. I've seen quite a lot of fake news, so to speak. And I think with the development of the internet and its growth to what it is today, I mean, we live in a global village for real. It's quite hectic. So one of the points that I think was put forward yesterday as one of the possible talking points was, what can business do from an internal policy perspective to cap the effects and incidences of unverified information or news on organizational decisions? So I think from a journalistic point of view, maybe just to take you through some of the steps that we take to verify some of the information that we come across every day, because you can imagine the amount of calls that we receive in the newsroom, on our mobile phones, through email now. Previously, it used to be fax, most of which is anonymous, and everybody obviously is giving you information based on their agenda, what they want to achieve, for whatever ends, really. The ends, are very different, but normally the means is the same way of doing things. So in most newsrooms that I've worked at, we have something called an accuracy test. So an accuracy test is basically a set of questions that any reporter needs to answer for every story that they do, especially those that have got legal implications, especially those that have got ethical considerations, or any other contentious story where there's a possible comeback of either ethical or legal nature. So that accuracy test is actually done in a form of, it's literally a form with a lot of questions that the reporter has to fill in, giving all the details about the story. Who did you speak to? How did you speak to them? Where did you get the information from? So the source of the information is always very important, because that way you are also able to determine the agenda or the real reasons why this person is giving you this information, because no one just wakes up in the morning and give you information that leads to a good story, and without them having anything to win at the end of the day. So you have to determine those things. Is this person a beta ex-business partner? Is this person a former husband of the subject who has an axe to grind? Is this person trying to, sort of nudge or have an advantage over their business, a rival, maybe for a big contract that's coming up? So you need to know all of those things before you can actually consider taking this information and making it into a story, because then you are able to sift through all the agendas. Once you have done that, then you are able to say, without bar the agenda that probably the bearer of the information has, is there a story from a journalistic point of view? Is someone committing a crime, about to commit a crime, or have they committed a crime? Is the money from the public purse being abused or about to be abused, or there's a potential danger that taxpayers' money is going to be abused or might be abused in this process, then once you have made the determination, that's when you move on to the next step of going through the reporting process, which is investigating, getting additional information through documents and many other ways, and then obviously talking to all the subjects that have got an interest in the story, to give it a balance. So that form that I'm talking about has got all those questions. And reporters ethically and legally have to declare everything. They also have to write in the names of the people that they've spoken to, whether those sources are on record or off record. But as a news organization, as a news editor or whatever, people in the food chain of news reporting, we have to know exactly what's going on, so that when certain decisions have to be made at the later stage, we are very clear about that. Or if there's a comeback where one of the subjects in the story, complains to the ombudsman or takes us to court to sue us, then we are very clear about what we have in terms of how we arrived at the decision of publishing that story. So it's quite, there's quite a lot that goes in, even though a lot of people in the public, they just believe that the journalists get the information from wherever they get, and then they just put it in the newspaper or in a news bulletin that is for electronic media. But no, it's not the case. There's quite a lot that goes through this process of reporting. But obviously, we've seen the proliferation of social media these days. Sometimes we find ourselves entangled in trying to compete with some of these social media platforms in terms of being the first or being among the first to have broken the news. And a lot of times, big media organizations have bent their fingers, through this kind of practice, because you find that, and most of it happens with deaths of people, obviously prominent people in society, where someone just wakes up and then claim that Nelson Mandela, for instance, has passed on, only to find that that is not the case. So there has been a lot of those problems in the past. And then, the second point that I picked was, are there any legal consequences for knowingly disseminating fake news? Yes, there are, especially in South Africa, but I must say that the prosecution thereof has been very little, if any. At the moment, we have one case that I can talk about, which is of a cabinet minister against a radio presenter, where it had to do with the Disaster Management Act, because this radio presenter went on air and claimed that this particular minister told them that the president is going to say this and that and the other in his next address. I think it was in a few hours or a day later, and that indeed was the case. So the minister was obviously very angry about this, and he pressed criminal charges against this particular radio presenter, and that case is ongoing, even though the radio presenter had tried to apologize, saying that it was just a joke. But that's where we are at the moment. So yeah, I think I've probably used up all of my minutes, but I'm happy to take any questions, if any, at this point.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you so much for that, and I'm very grateful with. Sorry, I'm having some interference about that. Phones. All right, thank you so much for your presentation, Amos. It's been wonderful. What we're going to do now is maybe allow the speakers to go ahead. We will hear from other speakers, and having heard from other speakers, what we will do at some point is then open this up for questions a bit later on during the panel session. But thank you so much for the insights you've given us. We certainly get the assurance that the news we read has gone through some checks, has gone through some scrutiny, and is not just appearing as such without having been thought out by those who are responsible for that. Just to the rest of the those who are in the session, I'd just like to remind you that your mics are muted. However, you can raise any questions you have for any of our speakers through the chat function. We will look at those questions and we'll be able to raise the appropriate questions at the time arrives. Thank you so much, Amos. I will take it maybe further to the next speaker, who's very ready. Hello, Temba. Welcome. Our next speaker is ready, and that's Jyoti Ruparel. I'm going to make you presenter, Jyoti, so you can maybe share your presentation. I've sorted that out. Okay, yes, you are now the presenter. You may go ahead and change what we are watching on the screen. Thank you so much.
Can all of you see my screen?
Absolutely, we are perfect. We can see everything that you've put on the screen. Thank you so much, Jyoti. Jyoti, I just want to give time just to introduce Jyoti, who's our next speaker. She's the Chief Risk Officer at Genpact and is a Strategic Advisory Board member for the IRM India affiliate. Jyoti has also been a jury member on CNBC TV India Risk Management Awards. So she's very accomplished, and I had to cut my introduction just to 2 lines. I know I could spend half a day introducing you, but thank you so much, Jyoti. Jyoti mentioned earlier that she's got a challenge with her voice, but we certainly hope that we'll be able to hear her, and where we can't hear her, the slides will do justice for us. Thank you so much, Jyoti. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, and I'll just go off video. I mean, that was quite an introduction. I don't know if I'm going to live up to that, but thank you so much. It was nice hearing Amos, and I'll quickly talk through some of the pointers I had. I hope all of you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just to kind of share some facts and figures, I'll very quickly touch upon some of the pieces which I'm sure all of you have read through as well. All this thing that we talk about, fake news, etc., this has been a huge concern for any amount of surveys that have got conducted across the globe. And I was looking up certain surveys and seeing that, for example, the Gallup survey that got conducted, 57% of the internet users pretty much voiced fake news as their biggest concern. If I look at the 2020 survey, more than 70% of the respondents ended up saying that they use social media as a primary source of news, and hence social media becoming a concern is a big concern in itself. I won't read through each of them, and you can pretty much look at the screen and see that across the globe, whichever region we pick up or whichever demographics we pick up, we end up seeing fake news as being one big concern. Coupled with that is the fact that social media is the least trusted news source worldwide. If I actually talk of Facebook, which I'm sure all of us are a part of, there were 1.8 billion fake news engagements, and 56% of the Facebook users can't recognize fake news, right? And all this actually gets coupled with the whole online fraud piece, which, as all of us know, is about an impact of $600 billion on the economy. And 45% of the global internet users raise concerns around it. And I think all of us in our various roles and the countries we live in I'm sure see that it is more pronounced with the older age groups, be it in the way of bank frauds or the WhatsApp news that gets circulated, so on and so forth. I also picked up a data point which I thought would be interesting for all of us to look at, that if you look at the Google Trends data, in the popularity of search item, fake news actually has been peaking since 2018. 2018 is when you see it peaked, and then of course it's been fairly popular over the last couple of years as we look at fake news. Now, I heard Amos talk about some of the aspects on when they are looking at publishing news. What do they look at? So this is a very, very standard approach to looking at fake news, and I'm sure all of you would relate to this. It's called the fake news triangle, which basically has text, audience, and production. What does it mean in layman terms? It simply means on text, what type of news it is. Is this news dated? Is it local? Is it international? Does it have verifiable facts, sources, responses from the people it is reported out to? And what is the value that it's bringing to the table? Then it's the audience. Who is this targeted to? Does this appeal to you? Why is this trending? Who is sharing this with you? Who would you share this with or not share this with? And then it's the production of the fake news. Who created the news? We've got to look at the fact that you have to look at the authenticity of the author. Triage through multiple sites. Figure out who's gaining in this, who's suffering in this, how's it happening. So that's perhaps one of the most standard approaches to looking at a fake news. Now, what I wanted to do here was fake news is a big topic, and we could cover like tons and tons of stuff around it. So I decided to actually pick up the most pertinent one, which I think the world is going through today, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll basically relate to that and take you back to this one cartoon, which was done by a British caricaturist, James Gilray, which is actually poking fun at the anti-vaccination rumors that went on for the side effects of vaccination against smallpox. It was that cowpox. So this is that cartoon which was fairly famous at that point in time. And what I intend doing over the next couple of slides is take you through a real case in point, which is the MMR vaccination. For a lot of you who may not be familiar with it, MMR is mumps, measles, and rubella vaccination. And I just want to take you through a case study which I stumbled upon and how fake news can create an impact on public health. And the reason I pick up public health is because that's the social ecosystem we all live in. And whether it's an individual or an organization, each one of us gets affected on it. And being the risk officer of one of the organizations, I can tell you that the risks associated with the pandemic is perhaps one of the biggest risks that sits on my risk map for the organization. And hence I thought I'll pick this up and take you through it. The reason I picked it up, I wanted to show you how in this particular case study, what really happened, how the fake news around MMR vaccine being related to autism went up, and how social media, etc., kind of contributed to it. And then how does it actually show that it had a real impact on public health? So what really happened is that if you look at this effect of this vaccination coverage from 2012 to 2019, it actually went down 3 percentage points. Okay. Now this clearly suggests that there was a relationship between the kind of media communication around the fact that one should not get vaccinated because it has side effects. But can we truly say that that led to a decrease in the vaccination? I'll take you through how it was determined and how we as risk professionals can actually do a better job of analysis and come through with it. So there are two ways one could look at this in debugging this risk myth, debugging this fake news myth. One is you could conduct an experiment, right? You could do randomized trials, controlled trials across a large amount of population, but we know that that is a humongous task because that would involve actually testing across a large population to see whether did the vaccine actually lead to autism or not. The other way to do is to look at statistical analysis. There's something called multiple regression analysis, which is basically looking at large amounts of data and looking at confounding factors. Without going into the large science around it, I'll broadly tell you what it does. It basically looks at data over a time period, and what happened in this particular case, where one of the big consulting firms actually performed this analysis, where they looked at the data of vaccination coverage over a time period. They looked at the confounding factors which were affecting the vaccination coverage, which was basically race, ethnicity, income, employment of the people, education of the people, the health policy, the logistical factors. And there was a statistically significant relationship. Now, what was it that was found? What was found that the measure of misinformation increased by 100%, right? And this caused a fall of about 0.2 percentage points. And that's the reason I mentioned that it does look like a small one. But if you look at it over a 5-year period, then this misinformation actually increased by approximately 800%, which actually led to a fall of 3 percentage points. Now that's how the public health gets impacted, because it's that much more population that does not get vaccinated and hence gets more prone to the risk of catching these diseases. And the classic thing that I'm mentioning this here today is because of COVID-19. And I'm sure all of us are aware of the fact that there is enough and more information rife on the media around why vaccination against COVID is not good, what are the side effects it has. There have been cases in point talking about clots because of a certain company's vaccine. So I'm just leading to it that as risk professionals, how we can measure this misinformation is something where we can contribute to making sure that people are looking at authentic data. Now, the fact that there is an availability of various social media platforms is very much there. The fact that there is unstructured data and the fact that there is huge volumes of data to analyze, right? We all know that this exists. Now, what essentially typically works, and I have seen through in a lot of these areas where artificial intelligence and machine learning can play a very key role, where you can look at the data, you can actually build algorithms to look at the broader population, and then you can actually build a statistical index that will actually help look at both the amount of misinformation as well as exposure over time. And this becomes extremely pertinent today, because when you look at something like the recent issue of clots happening due to one company's vaccine, what has come to light is when you statistically look at the data, the percentage of that happening is far and few in between. And that's how fake news contributes to actually changing the mindset of the people and impacting human behavior in a big way. Now, while we talk of individual and the ecosystem, I'd like to spend just about 5 more minutes on what's the impact on business, right? I'm sure all of you are aware of the Tesla case, right? There was a video that surfaced which said, there were these electric cars catching fire. Now, was the video self-driven car? Was that video completely incorrect? No, it wasn't. But if looked in isolation, yes, it became a news item saying that, it was impacting Tesla, and obviously it impacted the share prices of Tesla. Another instance in India where Yes Bank went ahead and filed a police complaint because there was fake news about its financial health and it caused panic in all of its depositors. Now that's how fake news can actually impact a business, both in terms of reputation, in terms of share price, in terms of brand value. Now, what can we do about it? And what I have seen work in my capacity as the risk leader across my organization and a couple of other organizations is to say that have a very clear response plan. That actually is the first step in making sure that you manage fake news. Second is building trust and transparency, both with your own employees in the organization and with all the stakeholders, be it your clients, be it your shareholders, across, and sharing authentic information. And we cannot undermine the impact of controlling the narrative. I think that becomes key in all this. So you've got to ensure that there are key people across the organization who are controlling the narrative. It cannot be each and every person in the organization. And then, of course, determining the source. And then there is this wonderful thing called the Streisand Effect, just for all of you who don't know it. It simply means when you try to hide something, you make it more visible. So just because people are touting disinformation about you or about your organization doesn't mean you have to engage in that. So that's again a very clear discernment that the organization needs to build and develop. And then, of course, making sure that you have within the organization very clear repositories of information that is current and up to date, so that if people are in doubt, they know where to look for the authentic source of information. And last but not the least, if there is a fake news, then of course build a focused response team, which can actually go back and respond whether to the media or to your stakeholders to ensure that this fake news does not impact the brand value of the organization. So those are a few pointers I wanted to leave you with. I hope I haven't taken much time, but I tried to cover as much in a short span of time. Back to you, Terence.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. We'll take you off screen for a while. All right, there you go. There we go, good. Okay, so thank you so much for your presentation, Jyoti. Wonderful, well presented, and I like the way you presented not just the definition of the problem, but you also then made it very clear how is it that we can solve some of these challenges that we face. Thank you so much for that. Questions are coming through the question and answer section. I wish I could say that there's an award for the most questions for whoever asked the most questions, but when I look, I can see that we will have to give give this award to a single person. I see quite a lot of questions coming through on the question panel. I will be allocating some of them to a panelist to respond by typing the response back to you, but some of them I will put them out into an open discussion. So an example of a question that's come up is, and I'm reading this off my other screen, as consumers of news, how can we verify news in the modern day of social media and instant gratification, as you have alluded to? So the question is, we know that newspapers have their quality checks. We know that they've got a process which we call an accuracy test, a very reliable kind of process to try and mitigate the incidences of what may be false in the end. But the question is, we are consuming quite a lot of our news on social media. So what are some of those methods by which we can verify that news on social media is indeed accurate or correct? That's a good question that leads me to our next speaker. And I'm hoping to have her digress into that subject of saying, how do you know? When you look at social media, how do you know what to listen to and what not to? In fact, can you ever know is the key question. Our next presenter for today is Mika Teko Chauke. She has a career that will baffle us all because she has a career spanning almost 20 years, but she looks 20 years, so very confusing. But Mika is highly experienced in advertising, PR, brand communications, corporate communications, mergers and acquisitions, foreign direct investment, promotion, stakeholder relations, creative and digital, marketing and activations. The list goes on and on. Thank you very much, Mika. We would like to usher you in. Please take us through your talking points. You're welcome.
Thanks, Terence. You know, and a good day to everyone else. You know, so I mean, from an opening perspective, without even delving too soon into the questions, I understand we're going to have a question and answer session a little later on. But you know, ironically, you know, the biggest asset in fake news risk management is also your greatest weapon, and that is your reputation. So in a world of fake news, and when fake news continues to rise, my take is that entities should focus on strengthening their reputations, and this should be an ongoing protocol when it comes to risk management. Your reputation, I mean, you know, and every asset associated with your reputation from a communications perspective, and I'm talking about your channels of dissemination, such as your official communication mediums and spokespeople, should be strengthened such that they enhance and neutralize the negative impact of fake news on your reputation. Fake news can create what we call conflict of interest. These are dynamics that oppose the narratives of your reputation and everything you've worked hard to stand for and represent as a brand and entity. So effective fake news risk management lies in understanding the realm and purpose of fake news. And you must remember that there is power in content and news. Fake news relies heavily on the absence of objectivity and probability, and well, the probability of people making a judgment or believing news and content based on their emotional connectivity to the content is what makes fake news thrive. So this is what sometimes makes reputation management so difficult, because you are essentially dealing with people's connection to the news rather than the credibility of the news itself. And the conflict then becomes a battle of reputation and credibility rather than actual subject matter. And this goes back to, you know, my original opening statement or argument, you know, saying that our reputations or the reputation that of our entities must outweigh the mediums and channels used to disseminate fake news. So when it comes to fake news and the media, source is everything. In building our reputation, we must trust our audiences and target publics that they have the capacity to scrutinize the source of the content that they consume. Fake news in the media has been used for various reasons, such as satire, advertising, and for exaggeration, shining a spotlight on certain issues, for example. Fake news has been used to direct audiences to certain platforms or certain issues. However, we find ourselves living in a time where most of young people find it difficult to distinguish fact and fiction. And this makes the detriment of fake news even more consequential. You know, we shared questions earlier. I don't know if you want me to go straight into the questions, or you want me to just pause here until there's question and answer time. Terence?
You can go ahead.
So the questions that was directed to me, the first question was, how do we raise trust, rating, and reputation as organizations in a world where public opinion matters? I think that we need to be accessible and remain consistent, because building trust doesn't happen in a vacuum. People will always have questions, and if there's no way for them to go to get their answers, or you don't respond in a timely manner, for example, you could begin to lose credibility. So responding to questions in person is a great way to increase your likability. My opinion is that organizations should always strive to be reliable, because people tend to buy on emotion and not logic. Talking a good game and turning around and doing the opposite is sure to draw negative reviews, leading to mistrust and decreased credibility. So be honest. being transparent means recognizing and being open about your strengths and weaknesses. Honesty shows that, you know, as an organization, you care about your target audience, your customers, their needs, and your willingness to help them, gets them the results that they're looking to achieve. Organizations need to bring value to their clients. Do you put your customers first, or do you put your revenue first? People know when they're just a rand sign to you, you know, or a dollar sign from an international perspective. And while they may still utilize your services or buy from you if they believe your product or service solves their challenge, this does not build long-term trust or encourage repeat sales. So your brand message and the way you communicate should be an extension of your actions and behavior. If it isn't true to who you are, or you can't deliver on it, you are being inconsistent, and inconsistency can lead to mistrust. The second question was, what are some typical reputation risk management strategies an organization can explore in the face of unverified news that implicates the organization? So every organization, no matter the structure, nature of operational size, has reputational risks, and all risks are significant in and of themselves. But resulting reputation damage can be even more catastrophic, as a reputation of a company is its biggest asset. Sometimes all it takes is a rumor to make the public lose confidence in an organization, ending it very quickly. So, you know, as the saying goes, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So first things first, you need to make reputational risk part of your strategy and planning. It is important to recognize the impact that reputation can have on success. Investigate your weaknesses and determine relevant reputational attributes within the organization. Brainstorm potential scenarios, for example, that could lead or that could damage public perception with employees at various levels, as they may have unique contributions that you might otherwise not have thought of. Also determine indicators and warnings for each attribute so you know when to take action. Secondly, I would say control the process, have a control of processes like standardization, technology, policies, and procedures. These reduce the likelihood and severity of events that could cause reputational damage. By focusing on constantly supplying quality products and services, for example, is much less likely that there will be a harmful mistake. If something does happen, you can lessen the extent of reputational damage by explaining measures you had in place to prevent the incident and how you prevent it from happening again. So carefully selecting third parties to work with and treat employees fairly to avoid scandals on the external front. I also think that organizations need to understand all actions can affect public perception. You know, from a board perspective to top management, and all of these, you know, respective stakeholders must recognize the importance of reputational risk management. And middle managers must lead by example to promote positive messages to key stakeholders. Organizational training, policies, and procedures, these can ensure that all employees know how to behave and respond appropriately in any situation. So when reputation is at risk, employees must act quickly and responsibly while doing anything within their power to positively influence public ideas. When you know what your client's expectations are, it is much easier to meet them. So understand stakeholder expectations. Don't try to set expectations too high by promising that you can follow up on them. This will backfire when you become known as that organization that cannot live up to its word. Learn what customers, shareholders, and employees expect from the organization and management, and strive to satisfy these conditions. Focus on a positive image and communication. In all situations, it's key to consistently send out positive communication. over time, this will build up your reputation in the public mind, lessening the impact of future damages, and always inform clients and employees what's happening and how you are responding to incidents in the organization or environment. Customer service, transparency, good governance, steady growth. These are some of the most important messages that one can convey. Obviously, you cannot always please everyone, so focus on satisfying your most important stakeholders first. Lastly, I would say create a response and contingency plans. If the worst happens, your organization must be prepared to respond quickly and appropriately. Every minute that goes by can be crucial and reduce the respect the public has for your organization and leaders. While seriously underestimated in some organizations, the risk that reputation presents is very serious. It is a potential side effect of any risk that can occur. So it's crucial to monitor it. Without effective, reputation management, it may take an organization a long time to recover from an otherwise minor incident. The last question, which we were was posed, Ed, was what space is traditional media taking in the news and information space, and how has traditional media been disrupted and is social media here to stay? Well, traditional media is here to stay. It remains a trusted source of information when it comes to news. There is no substitute for a factual, balanced story. And while it's true that more people are discovering news of the day through Facebook and other social media, such sites deliver information in headlines and sound bites. So at the end of the day, traditional media is not dead yet and still plays an important role in a healthy media mix. While the approach of media buying has changed with the advent of new technologies, utilizing all forms of traditional and digital channels is the foundation of a successful media plan. Traditional media remains greatly challenged, though, due to lack of warm leads, inconsistent customer revenue, no differentiation from other media companies, and losing money to online advertising and marketing services. The contours of the media landscape, I believe, continue to change rapidly, but the pace in which it is happening now, it is so overwhelming. I mean, we've got video on demand providers and social media platforms that have changed the traditional viewing patterns. So today's viewers are used to watching anything that they want, when they want it, and on any device. To a great extent, traditional media have been pushed aside by social media platforms, telco companies, streaming services, and tech giants such as your Google and your Amazon. These are all fighting for their place in the pecking order. So the strength of these new tech companies is their distribution system. They know that how to target their audience using smart technology to offer them content based on their individual preferences. But I think that to survive in this landscape, great distribution alone is not enough. For continuous existence, I believe any channel should have good content, preferably exclusive, and in many cases, this will mean producing their own content. So to answer your last question on whether social media is here to stay, I think this can be challenged, but I think that almost every marketer and communication practitioner believe their social media profiles are important to their business. And this is because social media offers so much reach. If social media were only popular in certain geographical regions or among people of a particular ideology, it would be more reasonable to assert its value would fade over time, for example. However, it's statistically established that social networking engagement transcends regional, political, and religious beliefs. In fact, social media is one of the world's most popular online activities. It is estimated in 2020 that over 3 billion people were using social media worldwide. And I think this number is projected to increase to over 4 billion by 2025. So, and I think this makes social media the most popular online activity in the entire world. And one of the reasons that social media marketing, for example, will not likely go away, it is its unique ability to target particular customers through sophisticated segmentation capabilities, which is the goal of any marketing effort. So while the internet is useful for researching information, reading news stories, and learning new trades, it's best at bringing people together. And that's especially what social media does. When it comes to buying, either certain goods or services, social media empowers brands to spread positive word of mouth. People love and trust other people. It is that simple. Social media brings an incredible value to the table. Terence.
Thank you very much for your insightful comments there. Mika, I've had quite a lot of questions coming through, and it looks like people are looking for some answers here. I just want to take time and just fire a question. I know we're not yet there, but I just want to fire the question. It says that, how do you suggest we manage an organization's reputation when the business does not have an active social media presence? So they're saying you're getting attacked, but you're not active yourself. You're not there yourself. Bongani Molif is asking, how do you suggest we manage our reputation when we are being attacked on social media ourselves? What is it we can do when we are not even on social media?
Thank you. Thanks for that. I mean, that's a very good question, right? And and I did say that managing your reputation should be part of your strategy, right? So the first things first is to try and be more accessible, which I've mentioned earlier. I've also touched on traditional media, that it is not dead. So even if you're not on social media, there are other channels that one can utilize to be able to gain that credibility. And the first things first is to ensure that you have a controlled process. Reputation is part of your strategic planning, and you put those measures in place. But the most important thing, I think, once you've selected the channels that are best in terms of reaching your target audience, is to ensure that you are very open, you are very honest, and so that you can come across as very credible, to sort of reiterate, your standpoint with your valued customers, to show them that you are there to help. Sometimes it is always better to just tackle issues beforehand, because things don't go away. It's what I've said earlier, that it can take you up to 20 years to build a reputation, but about a couple of minutes to just shatter it. And reputation is not built in a vacuum. It is something that you need to continuously work on. It is something that is very consistent. You need to be very consistent. You cannot do one thing and or say one thing and do the other, but it's something that you need to ensure from your organization that you actually put those measures that I mentioned earlier in place. If you haven't done it, I would suggest start doing it right now, because unfortunately, we need to move with the times. People consume media differently. You need to reach your target customers or your stakeholders in different ways, and find out where these people are, so that you can utilize those channels to reach them. But the most important thing is to build that relationship, to make sure that you own up to it, your strengths, your weaknesses. You have measures in place to sort of ensure that whatever it is, should there have been a crisis, it doesn't happen again. It's always important to communicate and always be truthful in that.
Thank you so much, Mika. Thank you so much, Mika. Wonderful insights that you've given. I do have one or two other questions that have been raised. I'm going to raise them in the Q&A session, but for now, I've allocated them to you on the system, so you should see them in your chat section and at least give detailed responses in that regard. Thank you so much. This has been quite insightful, and I'm finding it difficult to be a facilitator and also listen and process all the knowledge and write notes. I've got a notebook here, and I'm keeping track of some of the issues you're raising. Very insightful, very key. Social media is here to stay. It is relevant. It is our life, it is how we are doing things, but traditional media remains a key channel and a key partner in everything that we're developing. I can see that our next speaker is ready. So thank you so much, Mika. I'm going to introduce our next speaker for today. That's Richard Lucas. Richard is a specialist global risks and geopolitical agenda at the World Economic Forum and is a strategic advisory board member for IRM India affiliate. Wonderful guy, met him yesterday, enjoyed it thoroughly. Our discussion was wonderful, and I hope you enjoy his presentation as much as I have enjoyed interacting with him. Thank you so much, Richard. Over to you.
Thank you, Terence, and thank you all. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It's great to be here. And thank you, Hersh, for having me. It is my distinct pleasure to be here with all of you and all the other panelists. And thanks for the very interesting and insightful points that you've already raised. I think once you'll hear my intervention, you'll see that I also touch upon those. And also a great topic to discuss. It's not only a very timely matter, but one that has already shown its repercussions and ramifications on probably all of us in these past few years. So let me start my intervention from a personal perspective, and then I will switch to a more work level point of view. So as somebody from Generation Y, also known as the millennials, I've had the chance actually to witness the flow of information prior to the hyper-connectedness of the internet. Yet at a young age already, I was sucked into this fast-spinning world of the internet and the World Wide Web. So well-established media outlets, written and of course on television back then and on radio, they had a certain reputation, and you could trust the journalists and their analysis. Of course, you had to know to which ideas and values some of these channels or media outlets adhere to. But besides that, I would say you could rely on the information that you heard or you read. And then with the arrival of the internet and this all-encompassing connectivity, I would say within the past 10 years, with the birth of smartphones and internet being available in every corner of the world, news and their sources have considerably changed in my view. Everybody now has the capacity to become an eyewitness to an event, record and share it instantly, or even live stream it, as we've seen good and bad live streams in these past couple of years via their mobile phones. And to me, to be honest, quite often this feels like a quantum leap, right? We've gone so far within the past 10 years. People didn't have mobile phones 15 years ago, and now everybody is a journalist, so to say, or people think they are journalists. And so this ultra-liberalization of news has given the opportunity for every single person basically on the planet, or if we're more correct, for the 50% who are connected according to the International Telecommunication Union, to voice their opinion. And at the same time, this has brought along the watering down of what actually reliable sources are. And I think the previous speakers have already alluded to that somewhat about reputation, credibility, and trustworthy sources. So for me, as I grew up in this mixed period of time prior to the internet and with it, I can say that I know my sources that are trustworthy to the extent that I can judge them as such, right? Based on experience, counterbalancing them with other sources, speaking to great panelists, speaking to friends, family, and you kind of figure out what the good sources or the trustworthy ones are for you. This is because I had the chance to experience this. However, I can imagine how difficult it is, and here maybe I want to speak to the younger generations that are listening in as well, how difficult it can be for those who get connected and instantly bombarded by accurate or fake news at the same time, and how do you make up that distinction without prior experience? And of course, this is also true for those who connect to the internet, depending or regardless of their age and where they are. if you're an older person connecting for the first time, boom, it's just as overwhelming, I can imagine, as for a little kid. And this leads me, I would like to quickly speak on fake news themselves. I don't want to go down the whole road of defining what fake news are. Of course, that would be a conversation in itself, I think, depending also on where we are, where we're from. However, to me, fake news, as we know them today, and as Jyoti noted, that they're not a new concept per se. We've seen this for centuries with satire, with intelligence services spreading false news. The Cold War, of course, was very much a fake news war also to some extent. It's just, maybe if we look at it, we used to call it differently. We used to call it propaganda on some level, because it was mostly also, of course, state-run. A single person like you and I, we didn't have the capacity to spread fake news, so to speak. And while news, be it about events or happenings or boardroom decisions these days, or meetings on the highest levels that are ongoing, the world often immediately knows about them these days. And this leads me to another important point, which is trust, and I think Mikta put it very nicely before. It's credibility also. So this trust and credibility of people towards institutions has been challenged very much in recent years by the spread of fake news, of course. And this trust is true for the public, but I think also the private entities. Just as much as a tweet from, we know that a former president used to tweet a lot, a senior executive board member can also tweet. That can be a deliberately false tweet, but it can also be just a bad moment, and then all of a sudden the stock prices go tumbling down. So it's these things are very linked, of course. And so to me, trust is one of the key issues in this whole discussions, and the question on how to regain that trust. In my view, not every trust has been lost in recent years. I definitely believe in the good of people and their informed judgment, and how everybody tries to not fall into the trap of fake news. However, of course, where trust has been lost, it will be key to reestablish it. And I think this is up also to the media outlets, then the big tech companies, and of course governments, and figure out a way on how to regain that trust. And yes, and I think, as Amos mentioned previously, the proliferation of social media has brought an increased competition for first news broadcaster within the